Hi guys, Mike Lambo here. One of the most common questions that I get asked is where on earth do I start with a Mike Lambo game? And admittedly, at the time of this video, which is July 2024, there are 22 different Mike Lambo games, and I appreciate that that can seem a little daunting. Yes, I do have my YouTube channel, which is what you obviously found if you're watching this video, and I do have playthroughs and quick looks at them all, but I appreciate that in itself is now a mammoth task if you wanted to look through all of those things. So to help you try and narrow it down, I've decided to produce a video giving some kind of overview of my books. Now, this is not going to explain sort of what these books are. I've done other videos about that, you know, generally what a Mike Lambo book is and so on. But if you've decided that you want to try one, then this is the place for you in terms of helping you decide where to start. Now, my first game was The Fields of Normandy, which is this one. It now has a different cover to that, and the graphics are updated from the original version and look something like that now. Okay, you get the counters in the back, as you do with virtually every one of my games, right? So you just need to copy that or take that page out, stick it to card and cut them out, or you can download it from Board Game Geek. Anyway, that's a really good place to start if you have no experience of war games whatsoever, okay? Because this takes you from really from the sort of real basics of hex and counter wargaming. Starts off with a nice easy mission. You only have to read about half the rules, not even that probably, to get there. Then you can play the first few missions, see how you're going on, and it builds up to something a bit more complex, but never overly complex. So something you could probably learn certainly within an hour comfortably, especially if you have a look at the playthrough video as well. And you can be up and running with that in no time at all, and you will feel that, you know, that's giving you a flavour of hex and counter war games. If you already have some experience of hex and counter war games, or you've played this one, then you might want to move on to Fields of Normandy 2, which includes different maps, more units, but also just more rules generally, and is slightly more complex as a result. From that one, you could then move on to Fields of Normandy XL. Now, if you have experience of war games and you just want to try one of my games, then Fields of Normandy XL is probably a great place to start. It's one of my more complex games, but still not complicated. You can still be up and running, especially with some war game experience, within an hour or so. And you can see there the maps are bigger. Again, there are more unit types and just more rules, and more things happen, more decisions and so on. Okay, so that's the Fields of Normandy series. All right, not a bad place to start at all. In a similar vein, the Race to Bastogne has a similar kind of system to that, but is very much vehicle based. So here we're dealing with tanks rather than infantry, which the Fields of Normandy tends to deal with. Okay, so that is a similar sort of system, and it's probably, in terms of complexity, somewhere between the Fields of Normandy and the Fields of Normandy 2, that sort of complexity. Okay. Then I have my Battles series. So at the moment there are 5 Battles books. Okay. The most straightforward one there is the Battles of Medieval Britain. So again, if you've no experience of wargaming, you might want to try that one to start with. The AI is certainly a challenge, but the point is with this AI, the sort of pretend player, if you like, that you're playing against, it doesn't move its units around, so it's quite straightforward. You are doing most of your most of your turn is, most of the play time is you moving your units around, thinking about what to do. Don't think that makes it easy in any way, and sort of reinforcements arrive and so on, which makes it feel like the enemy is moving around. But generally the system works pretty well, but it is quite straightforward, and it's pretty easy to learn. Probably more or less the same sort of complexity as Fields of Normandy. Battles of Normandy is more complex than Battles of Medieval Britain. The German units will move around in this one, so the operation of the AI takes a little longer, but it's still fairly straightforward. You see the map's nice and big, small hexes, in other words. This one's been updated since it was first published in terms of graphics, and indeed the cover is now different as well. The cover has a representation of one of the maps on the front, so don't let that confuse you. So again, that's a fairly straightforward one. It's a bit more complex than Medieval, but not overly complex. Then I have these three, Battles of English Civil War, which is sort of more complex, as a fully fledged AI. It's different for each map, and you will feel there that you are playing against another player. So again, probably some wargaming experience would be helpful with that one. And certainly with this one, Battles of Napoleonic Europe, this is a thick book, more expensive as a result, has lots and lots of battles in there, loads of content you can see there, all with its own very individually programmed AI. So every map will give you a different challenge. Sometimes you'll be defending, sometimes you'll be attacking, lots of different objectives to achieve in different battles and so on. The rules are longer, they're more complex, but again, not overly complex. You need to keep sort of stressing that. None of my games is the sort of game where you're going to spend hours and hours and hours learning the rules and then sort of give up and think, oh, I'll put it away for another day. You'll be able to learn this fairly quickly, again, especially if you watch my playthrough in conjunction with reading the rules. So that's Napoleonics, if you like that sort of thing. So that's one of my most complicated games, I think. Alongside probably Battles of Kursk, again, it's got individually designed AI for each map, varied objectives, but obviously set in World War II if you prefer that. I should say all the game systems are different. So these battles books are all different. They don't work on the same game mechanics, so they are all different. So if there's one you think you like the look of, it is worth watching the playthrough video just to make sure that the mechanics suit the kind of game that you like to play. Another sort of mini series I could break down some of my games into. I have three what I call sort of lone books, if you like. I've got the original Lone Sherman, which actually now has a colour cover, so don't be put off by that. Don't be confused by that when you look online for it. Again, counts in the back as ever. You've got, I think, 11 missions on this one. Here you're in charge of a sole tank, a lone tank, Sherman tank, fighting against an AI, which is quite clever in how it operates against you. And you have to sort of, organise your crew and carry out various actions to achieve missions and so on. But it's you against tanks and infantry who, again, will move around and come after you on the battlefield. Again, different sort of system. Reasonably complex one, yeah, not difficult, but more so than some of those earlier games that I mentioned, which are more straightforward. That's Lone Sherman. There's also Lone Sherman the Pacific, so more or less the same rule set, although there are differences. And that's set, as its name suggests, in the Pacific Islands in World War II. And you're facing off against Japanese and the particular battle tactics that they used. Or, for something slightly different, we've got Lone Astro Tank, where you're in charge of a tank in space on various planets. And again, you are facing off here against aliens, including sort of flying saucers and infantry and various monsters and things. So that's slightly different, but again, it's a similar system to the Lone Sherman books as well. You fancy something slightly different. Okay, what else we got? So some other war games which sort of stand a little on their own. I've got Beaches for the Brave, which is my most straightforward and simple book. I wouldn't really call this, if you're looking for a war game, it is obviously it's a war game because it's about the Normandy and Pacific Island invasions, but it's not hex and counter, as you can see there, and it's a very different system, very different sort of game. There are 12 missions in here, or 12 beaches to play. They're very difficult, but each game will only take you 5 to 10 minutes. So if you want something that personally I think is very addictive, it's got, have a look at the reviews on Amazon, people really like it, but it's a very different sort of game. This is very much a dice roller. There are still lots of decisions to make, but it's very much luck of the dice, and you will fail time and time again, but it'll have you coming back for more and more and more. So it's one of those almost overly addictive games that people just, I think a lot of people sort of take it to work and play in the lunch hour because you can do it just for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. But it is quite different. It's Beaches for the Brave. Very simple, very straightforward. So if you try that one first, don't think that's a representation of any of my other games really, because it's not. It's something slightly different. Goes to the Jungle is, again, not hex and counter exactly. This is tile based, so squares you can see here, but still similar kind of game. This is you controlling a group of Australian SAS in the Vietnamese jungle and undertaking various missions. It's quite a stealthy sort of game, so it's less about fighting and more about kind of getting around and hiding in the bush and so on and so forth. So that's slightly different, but that in terms of complexity is reasonably straightforward. That's probably on line with the original Fields of Normandy or Battles of Medieval Britain. Maybe a little bit more to it perhaps, but not hugely. So that's perhaps another good one to start with if you fancy that. A couple more sort of complex ones. We've got Assault on Vimy Ridge, which is a World War I game, and again is tile based but involves Canadian troops attacking Vimy Ridge in France in World War One, but it's towards the end of the sort of later in World War One, and they're using almost World War II type tactics, if you like. There's still a bit of trench warfare and heavy artillery and the kind of things that characterise World War One battles, but it's quite an interesting game, I think. And reasonably complex as well, so towards the more complex end up there with kind of battles of Napoleonic Europe, Lone Sherman, those kind of games, I think. So probably one more for people who have already tried some of my earlier games or have previous experience with wargames. Long Range Recon Patrol is again set in Vietnam. This has you controlling a little group of 6 soldiers in deep behind enemy lines and undertaking various missions to do that. Again, quite a complex game for me, in terms of my games. Again, not it's not going to take hours and hours to learn, but it is at the more complex end of my spectrum, if you like. But again, hour or two of studying the rules, quick watch of the hour-long playthrough, instructional playthrough where I explain the rules, then you'll be up and running with that. And that's, I think is a great fun great fun game. It's really varied and different things happen every time. I do like to think that virtually all my games are, in fact, I think as far as I'm concerned, they're all very replayable. They will always play out very differently each time you play them because of the way the AI acts on dice rolls and has different options and so on. So lots of different things happen in most of my games, and each playthrough will be very different. Okay, then I've got a set here of slightly different games for various reasons. I've got Tank GP, which is not really a war game as such. This is a tank racing game. You have for 1 or more players. So you can play this against the AI, or you can join in with 1 or more players and AI tanks as well, and you sort of just race around these race tracks. You can see here you've just got a starting line as you'd expect, and you're whizzing around this track and firing at each other as you go, which is great fun. So reasonably straightforward. The AI takes a little bit of studying just to work out exactly how it works, but as ever in my games, you've got lots of examples. So if you fancy something a bit different, or if you've got you want to play it with somebody else, maybe the family or whatever, then it's a good one to have a think about. Then I've got 5 games here which are certainly not war games. So again, if you fancy something different, as I do sometimes, which is why I do write games which are not war games all the time. Hostage Rescue Squad, which has had a slight graphical update since publication, but not too much. It's a bit of polishing here and there. Is a good fun game where you are, as the name suggests, this hostage rescue squad. You're a group of 3 guys that come in. You're moving around on these tiles and you are trying to save hostages and get them out of the buildings and so on, away from the bad guys who have got them. So again, this is very much a stealth game. The bad guys move along these tracks. These triangles and circles dictate where they move and so on. In terms of complexity, fairly straightforward once you've got your hang of how the AI works, which is reasonably easy, I think. I like to think all my rules are nice and clear. So again, another stealth game. It's probably a step up from Ghosts of the Jungle, but a similar kind of game in some ways, although obviously the theme is very different. So you've got to get in, grab the hostages and bring them out before the bad guys get you, who are spawning around. You can enter into battle, but once you do, the threat level goes up and things get a bit manic fairly quickly. So stealth is a good idea there. Quest for the Brave, as the name suggests, is a bit like Beaches for the Brave, but it's very much a fancy game. As instead of attacking beaches, you are generally trying to kill bosses and traveling up tracks in the same kind of way. So it works very similar to Beaches for the Brave, but there's just a bit more to it. and it's fantasy based, should that be your cup of tea. My main fantasy game is Salacia, the Wizard of Doom, which is a sort of fully fledged adventure or dungeon crawl type game. And so you set off and you're going to play 5 quests, which are different each time. You sort of roll for them and play the quests that come up. So you've got 5 of those, gradually getting harder. You've got a whole load of enemies to be fighting against, including things like, biting bushes, dragons, ghosts, giant hornets, giant spiders, ice ogres, the usual orcs and skeletons and wizards and things. So they're all appearing randomly as you go. You've got some kind of level up here for your 4 heroes. So you can level up your warrior and your elf and your thief and your mage. They get injured, they get killed, you can resurrect them. The wizard, your mage can cast various spells. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Again, quite a complex one, I guess, for me. At the end of again, this is like this sort of Vimy Ridge, Lone Sherman, Recon Patrol, Salacia. They're Napoleonics. They're certainly the ones that are at the more complex end. For something slightly lighter and space-based, we've got Spiders from Outer Space, which is more like your sort of you've got a group of 3, 4 or 5 good guys, all with different weapons, different abilities, and you're moving through this spaceship, and there are these spiders that are spawning and kind of just charging at you, and you have to sort of deal with them and achieve the objectives. And again, it's just a great bit of fun, really. It's all about dice rolling. It's all like killing. I guess it's a sort of, if you think of games like Zombicide or games set on, the name escapes me, games set on a spacecraft where the baddies just kind of charge at you and you have to just blast them out of the way as you go through. I can't remember what the hell was that called. I can't remember. Anyway, it's that sort of thing. So complexity, sort of mid complexity, nothing too hard, be up and running in no time at all. We've got Outpost finally then, 2099, which is again a space game. You are in, it's a sort of States of Siege game, if you know what one of those is. So you're controlling a crew in this space station. They're all different. You've got 10 of these to have a go at. You can see your space station generally has some guns. You have you have 3 crew, but you decide those crew randomly each time, and you can also have a robot which you can activate and use that and reactivate when it gets destroyed and so on. So there are and each guy, each of your potential crew members has different abilities. Again, you're running around the ship, you're fending off these aliens which are coming along these tracks. If they break in, they start hunting your crew down. There are weapons they all have. Whilst this is all going on, you've got to do research in the lab, and you win by getting the research up to 12 and then destroying all the aliens once you know the kind of secret method for killing these aliens, which you work out when you get to research 12. So again, good fun, not easy, and one that will have you coming back for more, I think. So that's a quick run through of my games. As I say, if you are brand new to my games, then certainly the Fields of Normandy series is as good a place to start as any, or one of the early Battles games like Medieval or Battles of Normandy. If you fancy something a little more involved, maybe Battles of the English Civil War or Napoleonics if you've had wargame experience before. But there's lots to choose from, and hopefully that video helps you just see which are the more complex and which aren't, which are more straightforward. Okay guys, thanks very much. Cheers.